You don't come from Africa, do you?
Steve Jobs says that it's very difficult to connect the dots looking forward. You have to look backward and trust that they will connect.
There was never a time where I would have said, this is exactly what I want to do.
Success is ephemeral and failure is not fatal.
I was the youngest associate investment officer in the infrastructure department at IFC.
500 Global does all of that.
Within 500 and even within how I invest, it's really not about the check, it's how you treat people. The one thing that always rang very true to me is that opportunity meets preparation.
Be prepared to be lucky.
I joined the Ministry of Finance. It was one of the most respectful and intellectual teams I had ever worked with.
The tone of the music has always been timely in your life.
I feel relaxed. It's been such a great conversation. I feel I've tapped into parts of myself that I didn't think I'd be sharing today.
Welcome in the Valley. I'm your host today and my name is Ibrahim Sanya. We have an amazing show today, but before that, a gentle reminder. Press that subscribe button, join the community of funders and founders, changing sports, tech, entertainment, and fashion from Africa to the rest of the world, and never miss a thing. Enjoy the show.
Amal, in your home country, Egypt, Cairo, heart of the summer. So great to have you here.
The motherland, yes.
It's always been something we've been wanting to do for a long time. And it gives me great pleasure to host you because you and I have multiple touch points, multiple common friends, but I'm here in your good hands and in your lovely country. And what I wanted to start with is to dive into Amal herself. How are you feeling today?
Today, I'm feeling pretty good. It's the end of the summer. I've had a really great summer. It's been brutally hot, but we've had many adventures throughout the summer, many touch points for reconnecting with old friends and good friends, and it's making me feel very energized, very full of much to give for the rest of the year, especially to Egypt. So it feels really good to be back home.
So I'll pick the term energize in line with our common YPO training. You have to pick an adjective. So talking about common point, not only we share YPO, but also, we have lots of friends from the government of Egypt, from HBS, from YGL. So a lot of Y's in your life. And Steve Jobs says that it's very difficult to connect the dots looking forward. You have to look backward and trust that they will connect. In your own case, you've had a very interesting life where you've worked with multilateral financing organization like the IFC, where you've delved into both debt and equity, have also worked here in Egypt, leading the endowment of the American University, and have invested in GPs. So you've also held a life of a fund of funds. And you've also done a lot of work in collaboration, helping different parts of the government of Egypt. So both private, public, debt, equity, direct investment, indirect investment have been part of your life. And somehow the entity you work for today, 500 Global, does all of that. Who would have known that you were just being prepared to be lucky? So why don't you take us as far back as you can about Amal?
Well, we don't need to go too far back. I'm not that old. Can't you tell? So it's going to be a short story. But I believe the one thing that always rang very true to me is that opportunity meets preparation. And so there was never a time where I would have said, this is exactly what I want to do. Like, this is where I'm heading. It is, I'm razor sharp about the end point and this is where we're going. if that was the case, and whenever someone lays out an elaborate plan of, this is how we're going from A to B, I'd be like, you don't come from Africa, do you? All these very elegantly carved strategies, I don't think they ever work.
Correct.
So I love the Steve Jobs quote that you mentioned on you can only connect the dots looking backwards. And that for me has definitely been the case. 10 years ago, had you told me what a fund of funds is, I'd be like, fund of who? So I grew up in Egypt, and I went to the University of Cairo. I was Cairo University. I studied economics. I had my first job at investment banking at EFG Hermes. When I was graduating, I had no idea what investment banking is. I had an offer from P&G and another one from EFG, and I said, well, one of them sells soap. I don't think I really want to be selling soap. I'm not quite sure what the other ones do, but the people I met there were really smart. The interviews were hard, and the people were really smart. So that seems like somewhere where I would learn a lot. And I took the chance, I took the plunge. Increasingly, I have to say what is important is less so about, carving or setting your next milestones, but getting clear about your whys, which is what you were asking. The why do I say yes to this and why do I say no to something else? So from there, I was very keen on studying abroad. So I went to LSE, the London School of Economics. Back then I studied, I did my master's in environment and development. That was not fancy at the time. Like now everyone is into sustainability.
Yes,
Climate is the next big thing. It is the thing of of this decade, of decades to come, and I wholeheartedly believe in the why that is extremely important in this day and age. But back then, there was people coming from investment banking to go study environment and development. I looked like a tree hugger, right? Like I looked like a completely wacko kind of person. But from there, I actually was interning for the Infrastructure Journal while I was at LSE, and I wrote an article on the potential for renewable energy in the Middle East, and it got picked up by IFC.
Wow.
They were hiring at the time. The hiring manager called me and he said, by the way, we read your article. I didn't even think I'd have a shot at IFC at that point. And I applied. I was the youngest associate investment officer in the infrastructure department at IFC. And we worked on multiple infrastructural deals, not just in Egypt, but throughout the Middle East and Pakistan. And it was a really exciting time. It was just one of the times where it was very early in the steep curve towards, the organization's move towards sustainability. And from there, one of my first bosses at EFG called me because the Ministry of Finance was hiring, and the minister at the time was an extremely renowned economist worldwide. And she said, I know you've always wanted to work in public policy. They are looking with people with exceptional backgrounds, which you have, and people who have studied abroad. And I think you'd really enjoy working in his office. So I joined the Ministry of Finance, working in the minister's office. It was one of the most respectful and intellectual teams I had ever worked with. Very, very driven, very rigorous analysis. And we were working directly for the minister. And 6 months later, revolution happened in Egypt. Everything changed overnight. That was not planned. That was definitely not in my elaborate, very elegant plan for how to get from A to B.
Too carefully could get you in trouble.
But I learned so much at the time because literally, everything was up in the air. You're putting out fires every day. You go in, I worked with 5 different ministers since then, in just a 2-year span at the Ministry of Finance. And that's when I knew I needed an exit plan. I was like, well, I can't really stay here for very long, given everything that was going on in the country. And someone I know was like, well, I know you've always wanted to do your PhD in economics, but why don't you entertain the idea of going to business school? And he said, you have everything it takes to go to business school, to one of the best business schools, and why don't you just give it a shot? And at the time, it seemed like a good exit plan. It's like, I need to think through my options. Being in government in Egypt at the time is not very stable. And I applied to Harvard Business School. Lo and behold, I got accepted. And I got a full scholarship to attend HBS from Orascom.
Nice.
And, it was a life-changing 2 years for me. The number of friends I've made, just the networks, the connections, but also
the best
the
parties.
horizons,
And the best parties.
And yes, the best parties, the best trips. I've traveled the world with HBS, and I'm still super close with my friends from school. Like I met a number of them this summer, and this is why I feel energized. I feel renewed. I had my 10-year reunion 2 months ago, and it was
Wow.
spectacular to go back and
Congrats.
recollect and see where it all happened. And at the time, I thought when I was in business school that I wanted to go to consulting. I was like, I'll join the McKinseys, BCGs of the world and do advice for public policy, but from within consulting. And I remember a friend of mine from my section reaching out and saying, I know you want to go back to the region. I know you're very set on going back to the Middle East, but there's a fund that's recruiting and they want an Egyptian out of Harvard Business School to join this new fund called the Egyptian American Enterprise Fund. And it's seeded by the US government to invest in private sector development in Egypt. It sounded fishy. I was like, why is the US government investing in Egypt again? That just doesn't add up. But he said, why don't you meet the chairman and meet some of the board members? One of the board members was his mentor, and I met with him because he was a partner at T Associates in Boston. And again, it was a very, very interesting, very smart conversation that I had with this board member. I found them very respectful, very passionate about what they want to do for Egypt, and very driven to do the right thing. And when I met the chairman, I was equally just very impressed by their own expertise and their own experiences. The chairman was chairman of the Exim Bank in the US. He served during the Clinton administration. They had done so much that I felt like this is a place where I would learn, and this is a place where I could do something new. Like, it was a completely white slate. I was the first employee. This is when I started to understand what funds of funds is, because we were doing direct investments. Some of the most notable investments we've made were Fowry. So we were investors in Fowry, which later went public. Sarwa, now Contact, which also went public, and a number of healthcare and education investments. But we also started doing funds of funds. So we invested in Algebra Ventures, we invested in Plastics Labs. And that's when I started to get excited about the opportunity in venture. Just seeing, the innovation that was happening in Egypt, the dreams of entrepreneurs, the solutions they were coming up with. And I got married and I moved back to Egypt. At the time, I was living in New York. So people ask me, so why did you go move back to Egypt? You love Egypt so much? I was like, no, really, my husband does. I moved back for him. I love him so much. And it was a really great time because VC was picking up. There was a lot of action. There was a lot of things that were happening in the market that I felt very energized by again. And it spoke to me. So I started doing more angel investing. I joined a VC fund out of Dubai, Global Ventures, and we did some notable deals in Egypt at the time. One of my favorites was Udewi. We did Thunder, Minli. A lot of great entrepreneurs, very smart, very driven again. And, people who had something to add and had something to bring to the market. And that was really important for me. I also joined, like you said, the American University in Cairo. I became the CIO of the endowment. And it was a very meaningful mission for me because both of my master's degrees independently were completely funded by scholarships. So I had a full scholarship from LSE to do my master's there. I had a full scholarship from Orascom to do my MBA at HBS. And I went to Cairo University. I didn't even go to AUC. So having the endowment being able to not only grow returns, but really grow the financial means for more students to attend AUC and to have access to great education, for me is extremely, extremely important. I think generational equity and access to education are my two whys. Like, this is really what is extremely important because it elevated my life in ways that I would have never imagined. And now we can connect the dots going backwards. And I can tell you, I knew I would do 2 years of investment banking and then go to IFC for 2 years and then do HBS. But it was never like that. And I feel a strong why to continue the journey of increasing equity, justice, and giving back the privileges that we've enjoyed.
Well, that's a lot accomplished in your little 25 years.
Very young, I told you.
A young, recent teenager like you to have done that much. The one thing I note is clearly within the algorithm of Amal going into action, a lot of people tend to have the sequence being the heart, the head, the hands. And in your case, there's a consistent emphasis around the head, the intellectual, the methodology, the expertise. That tends to be what starts to be tack, tack, tack.
Absolutely.
And tell me how that mechanic got you seduced to 500 Global when you met them.
I think all three play a part in at different times. So the heart will tell me, what I'm attracted to. And when I met the people at 500, especially Courtney in the beginning, so I got introduced to Courtney when she was in Egypt, I think 3 years ago. And I was very, again, humbled by just how down to earth the people were. Like, she's a global managing partner, she's a chief operating officer. And she was extremely easy to connect with. She was, she exercised
Absolutely.
extreme humility, and it showed the true culture of the organization, how we treat founders. So it's a really, respect people first. And it's something that I've been very appreciative of within 500, and even within how I invest, is like, it's really not about the check. It's how you treat people and how you make people feel. When you meet entrepreneurs, they're really putting their life out there. Some, have children and marriages that are really struggling, and lives outside that are really struggling because of the sacrifices they're doing for their businesses. And it's important to meet people with dignity and give them the respect for the work that they're doing. And so I see investors who would make it about the money and make it about the terms and make it about the equity and the ownership that they have in the company. And I think that is important to be balanced out by the respect for founders and appreciation of the work they're putting in. And so that is something that I've definitely felt heart-wise right away within 500, just how founder-focused they are, because they are themselves, many of them are actually
Former
founders.
yes.
Courtney was, Christine is a product person. You meet many people within 500 who have had a number of successful businesses and have become investors and have evolved within the organization as investors accordingly. The other thing was the diversity. So we talk a lot about diversity and how it's important to have different people in the room to collaborate and have different opinions. There's never been a place where I've seen as much diversity as within 500.
Absolutely.
You see it, and 40% of the leadership are women, which is something we talk about.
And the top leadership is all women.
Yeah, so they really walk the talk. They really own the value, and I think to have the two partners in the Middle East being women, myself and Amal Enan, is something exceptional, because you don't see many women partners in the Middle East, let alone within Egypt and Saudi. Just the diversity of, like, whenever I'm looking at at a company, I know I can call the team in Southeast Asia or in Latam, our team in Mexico, or even within Africa now we have more people on the ground, and it's really embodies that diversity of thought, the diversity of innovation, and something that keeps me on my toes, because I feel like I'm constantly learning and constantly appreciating. So that was a very hard thing. From a head perspective, there's much to be done in Egypt, right? I think increasingly I wanted to see more sophistication in what was being brought to the market. I think there was a lot of enthusiasm. There was a lot of excitement around entrepreneurships, bringing new ideas to the market. And increasingly, I felt like having a U.S. Silicon Valley-based organization investing in Egypt brings a different flavor and a different level of sophistication on how we do deals, and bringing that to the market is a real testament and credibility to the Egyptian market and more markets in Africa that have potential and have the ability to attract U.S. investors. And I think collaborating, again, bringing that diversity of thought to the market was important. And this is why we launched the programs that we did, the Seed Bootcamp, the Scale Up program, as well as a bootcamp for accelerator managers to really elevate the level of education and sophistication by which we're doing business in Egypt. Lastly, the hands are always working. You gotta do it. You can't just talk. You gotta be doing it.
No, the hands have been busy throughout, and
always.
It's
my feet have always been busy too.
No. I think it's the whole package. I think the tone of the music has always been timely in your life, and I think you kind of have to, like you say in the beginning, be prepared to be lucky, and it's all about the preparation. I think that sinks through your journey, your story, and the sentiment you had with when you met with Courtney and 500 is the same. And I think it's probably a testament of the organization at large that all of you are highly cerebral, and there is a vast amount of humility that comes across, irrespective of that high cerebral force, from the notion that a lot of people inside have been founders at some point, have also had a lot of success in their past and have faced failure.
Yes.
And they have that clarity that success is ephemeral and failure is not fatal. And I think that combination is consistent across all of you.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a value set that I'm always pleased to see when I interact with any of you, and also see how you transfer that to the founders. Now, in terms of what you have achieved at 500 since you have started, what are 3 programs, 3 transactions that excite you the most? And this is at the height of the boom and then the winter.
This episode is powered by Africa Venture Capital and Private Equity Association, also known as AFCA. AFCA is the leading Pan-African industry body championing and enabling private investment in Africa. They provide independent, thoughtful, and crucial research to the African private equity and venture capital industry. They also organize networking platforms for their members throughout the year across Africa and around the globe. We are a big fan.
The winter. I have to say that the winter revealed a lot, because you lose excitement, right? Like at this, we are human, and, when the markets are not going well, when you're not seeing liquidity flowing, when you're seeing the dampness of how slow rounds are becoming, how slow things are, we start to question what am I really doing? Is this worth it? Is this worth my time? Is this worthwhile? And the winters revealed a lot for me personally on why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then the evidence and the testimonials that were coming from the companies and their performances, as well from the founders and how they feel, gave me a lot of validation for why this work remains to be very important. So the 3 things for me are, 1, I am extremely proud of the team that we've built in Egypt. I think, we all say our teams are the best. Mine is really the best. I'm
Right.
sorry, they're really the best.
Great
And I just really love and appreciate the harmony that has been built between the team, just how collaborative they are, how they really complement each other, compete not with others in the market and not even within themselves, but compete with their own selves to bring out the better version of themselves to serve the founders. And they are an extremely generous and market serving team, which is something sometimes I'm like, you guys are too friendly. I'm not friendly, So don't be that nice. Stop being so nice.
No,
to
I
people.
I think for any of us that have spent a good amount of time on investment banking, just
We're not
exuding
nice.
love is
Yeah,
just
at
not the
some
first
point,
reflex.
the friendliness, got diluted somewhere.
But I think the
maybe
VC
it's somewhere inside me. It's just very diluted by now.
But the VC helps. I think the
The
VC experience kind of
brings it back.
helps
You have to
soften all
smile
the hard
apparently.
edge. Yes.
Smiling is a thing. It doesn't matter how good your PowerPoint presentations are. You gotta look friendly. So I am, and that team is very energetic, very giving and very friendly, I have to say. But very proud of that. I am proud of how the founders have endured the winter with persistence and resilience. I think many we would have expected to shut down earlier, and they have really tried different methods and just slimmed down and trimmed what was not necessary, went back to the core and started to explore much more viable paths, such as being acquired or merging with others. And I think that was the sign of maturity that we needed to see, that of those particular companies, at least, I think, within the excitement, there was hubris, and we've, seen that was not supposed to continue, did not continue. So the survivors for me were ones that were able to more than just weather the storm, but really grow out of it and show us something different and show us something that is more sustainable, much more long-term enduring, and something we'd be proud of. So that, I think, was something that gave me more validation for why the work continues to be important, and these companies do have potential beyond what was evident even early on in their investment journeys and their building journeys. And I think the third is I started to appreciate the importance of education for founders. I think, I came from a background of pedigree. So it's more of, I went to these schools, so I got the pedigrees. It gave me access to networks. Of course, education is important, and it was formational for my character and my professional careers. But I didn't understand how, even entrepreneurs throughout their journeys need those intervention points. And I think one of the things that we take for granted, for example, at YPO, is forum, and creating those forums, creating those spaces for founders to become vulnerable with each other, especially our hard times, because they do carry a lot. The burden, is extremely heavy, but it's extremely lonely. And so the programs were not just designed to be like, here's how you calculate your unit economics, and here's what a term sheet should look like, and here's, what valuation models look like. We delved more to create spaces and retreats for founders to come together, to be friends, and more than friends, to go deeper and really share what was going on for them from a mental health perspective, relationships, hard decisions that they were going through. Like, during winter, we've seen a lot of layoffs, and how do you make those decisions? How do you communicate? How do you live with them? A lot of these things were hard for founders to be experiencing, because something that I wasn't as aware of earlier on is how young this market is, and by virtue of that, just how young the entrepreneurs were. So when we gave them a lot of harsh feedback on governance, I was like, why did I expect them to know much more about governance? They are young, and they are learning, and we are all still learning on this journey. And so creating spaces that are safe for learning through those programs was something that I felt was missing and much needed. And it's better to do it through the hard times and form that unity, because in good times people forget, but they'll always come back to that space, and hard times will come again. Like you said, failure is not the end. Actually, life continues, and there will be successes and many failures to follow.
No, I love what you're saying, and it hits home. I would even double click on what you've labeled as education, to reframe it in building safe places. Because I think that what comes across, because I would argue that high caliber school, pedigree school, really, beyond the knowledge you acquire there, it's really that safe space. That container, that network. It continues, it resonates, it supports. And that's really, one of the best things really that happened in my life is YPO. And a lot of people, until you're inside, you don't realize the power of that network. And you fundamentally realize that it's really the therapy aspect of it, where actually that safe place allows you to be yourself and discover things you did not know about yourself, because you don't do that inner trip comfortably with others often.
Yeah.
And I think you guys taking a stack at really putting it into your network founders is going to yield exponentially. So congrats.
And that's the idea of giving back the privileges we've enjoyed, like having experienced that, knowing how valuable it would be for the founders and for other communities to actually form communities for those spaces to happen and for those containers to be built.
So let's double click in Amal, who now has told us that the person that she loves the most is her husband. Now, if we had to pick the person that has influenced you the most, who would that be?
As cliche as it sounds, I don't find it so cliche after last week because Michelle Obama said the same and Kamala Harris said the same. So I think I'm onto something here. But it's truly been my mother. I think my mom is a doctor. I never thought that anything I do with my life will come close to what she does to others, literally healing patients. She's an ophthalmologist, she's a surgeon, she makes people see. So, people will walk in and she will do a surgery and they walk out in 10 days, they're able to see again. And that is life-changing, wouldn't you think? So I never thought that anything I do within the realm of finance will come close to changing a person's life like that. But seeing how she treats people and the generosity she has and the humility, but also just, my mom is the type who will help anyone, people we don't even know. I'll be like, why do I need to carry a package, as I fly from the US to Cairo to someone we've never met before and who is not a relative or anything. But my mom will do favors like that to everyone and anyone. How she treats nurses at the hospital, how she treats patients, how she treats doctors. It really embodied for me generosity. And doing everything with love. So really it was more about whatever you do it with love, you do it with kindness and respect. And embodying that generosity has been one of the values that I really hope to carry forward. And it's something that she's just displayed day in and day out in her work, with her family, with her partner. And it's something that I always aspire towards, to live generously and give generously.
Beautiful. So there is a quote that says, in everyone's life, there is a chief orchestra, a pianist, a guitarist, and a percussion, the one that hits the battery.
Yes.
So I would argue your mom has to be either the pianist or the guitarist, because there's some melody about generosity, kindness that she's infused into your very cerebral life.
Sure.
Now, who would be the chief orchestra? Who would be the percussionist? And the guitarist? Your life has been in many places, a lot of mentors, a lot of leaders. So this is a tricky question.
I think the thing is, people think they have a role, and it's usually the music coming out of them is a very different role. So my husband, for example, may choose to think that he's the orchestrator of things.
Like all of us.
We all know differently. I think we all know the truth. But I do believe I am probably the maestro orchestrator of things. I come up with ideas, and then my team will execute. My husband will execute. Someone else is doing more of the execution, getting their hands dirty with things. I do think I have more of the big picture, on the strategy, big picture, economist lens of the world, or of the strategy, or the plan that we are trying to implement. And I'm usually working with different people to make that happen and to see how each one fits in to bring it out. So I have a very easy example from the summer. I went to the Olympics in Paris. We watched a lot of the games. It was a lot of fun. And the way it happened is, one day I was on my way to a workout in the morning, and I saw a text message on one of the YPO groups saying they're going to release the final 100,000 tickets for the Paris Olympics in 1 hour. And my husband is extremely into sports. He loves sports. Yeah. So I forward this message. I wasn't sure if he's going to see it because it's early in the morning. And so I call him. I barely ever call anybody, let alone at 8 a.m. in the morning. I call him and I say, did you get my message? They're releasing. It's a final release for the tickets officially. And he says, no, I have a physio appointment. I can't get on my laptop in an hour to do this. I'm like, okay, sure, but you hinted that you might want to go this summer to the Paris Olympics, so this may be the chance. I kid you not, in 1 hour, I walk out of the workout, or like an hour and a half later, I walk out of the workout. I find 5 different missed calls from him to see which games I wanted to attend. He's like, I didn't know what you want to attend, so I went all out and I bought everything. And I'm like, what? I'm like, okay, I guess we're going to Paris. So I initiate the idea, I give the suggestion, I give an incentive for why to do something. And let people execute. And he had a great time. He saw LeBron. He saw, he was over the moon. I've never seen him happier. Yeah, it was like, it's the dream team playing, and it was I kid you not, I don't think I've seen him this happy on our wedding day. But the
Well,
basketball games really
I-
did it for him.
and I promise you, this was second runner-up. The wedding day is still number one. Please don't be confused.
Yes.
I confirm for him.
Life is long.
I know he loves basketball, but that's a number
but
two.
if he's happy, I'm happy. So this was more of an example where I would orchestrate something and I let people execute. And I had a grand time. Like, who wouldn't be happy in Paris?
Amazing, amazing. If you, they say the painter has to paint, the musician has to play music, and the active person has to play sport. What is it that Amal has to do to be? If you had to pick one word, one verb, what would it be?
Write. I absolutely love writing, and a writer has to write. I read a lot. This is truly my time to self, is just to be lost in the book. Like if we are on vacation and I forget my Kindle charger, my husband knows, like, vacation ruined. Like, my vacation is really reading. But to be me, to be in flow, I love writing, and that's something that comes out in multiple ways. And whether I'm writing memos, investment memos, emails, but truly creative writing is something where I feel the most expression. And I have to say, like, one of the things that, as I was speaking about being the orchestrator versus the execution person, I think this is where the team kind of gets very challenged, because I set a very high bar for what I expect and the things that we could see happen. But I know they can make it happen, like seeing the potential. So every time I come up with a grand idea and they're like, oh my God, there she goes again, something like ridiculously impossible to execute in such a short period of time. But when you have the belief in people, it really takes them to that next level. And it really, brings out things they didn't think were possible within themselves to achieve. And how I reward is usually through writing. So something I would be very observant of how people have carried themselves in situations, and how they've executed on something, and how they've been looked tired, but really did it with love, or did it in a meaningful way. And just observing that and writing it to them afterwards has left a mark. So it's something where it allows me to capture not just moments or emotions and expressions, but to really show appreciation and show that they have been seen and the work hasn't gone unnoticed.
Beautiful. And in true YPO fashion, you started telling us how you felt in the beginning. How do you feel now?
I feel relaxed. It's been such a great conversation. I feel myself. I feel relaxed. And I feel I've tapped into parts of myself that I didn't think I'd be sharing today.
Oh, beautiful. And before we separate, you have to tell us something that gives you hope about Egypt, about yourself and family.
Well, my name means hope. So,
see?
in case you didn't know, Amal means hope. And I always have reason to be hopeful. It may be that my gift is an extraordinary belief in hope. And so for Egypt, I am hopeful because the people are extremely driven. I think one of the things that we think people in Egypt are lazy or not hardworking enough. I find people in Egypt extremely creative. We have workarounds for everything. We hustle. We make things happen when it was like, the 11th hour and you thought like things are falling apart. So I still believe in Egyptians' drive, their hustle and bustle. Like look at the city and just how hustling, even through the summer heat, through power shortages and everything, it still is awake. And so that still gives me a lot of hope. As long as it's beating, I'm hopeful. What gives me hope for myself is that whenever I fell, I rise again, and the continuity of life and just how far I've come, and makes me believe that there's so much more that I have yet to see and uncover, and more to see from myself, more to see in the world, and all the setbacks have been really just a reminder that that it's not the end and that there's more to come. So it gives me a lot of hope to see what else is in the future. And for my family, the same. I think, again, seeing how far my family has come and the love that we share for each other and how we've been there for each other through hard times makes me believe that there's more joy and more love to come and to hold us together.
Beautiful. Separating words. What is the kindest thing someone has done for you? If you can think about it now and spell it out.
No one's ever asked me that question, and I have a moment that came right away because it was truly one of the kindest things. So one of the things that people know that I have had several health issues, and I've had an open heart operation, and it was an extremely difficult time. And I do remember out of just the first night in the ICU, the nurse who was spending the night with me in the ICU combing my hair. And you have no idea just how alive I felt when she did that. Just seeing a stranger's kindness and seeing how just the act of someone combing your hair can bring you back from a very dark place to see like, oh, I can still look pretty again. And I was completely broken, and who cares about my hair at that point? But it was a very kind act, and it was something that brought back a lightness in a very, very dark moment.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing such a precious moment, and thank you for the gift of your time, Amal.
Thank you.
This was lovely.
Hey, if you like today's story, press like, leave a comment, subscribe, come back for more stories from founders and funders changing the face of sports, tech, entertainment, and fashion from Africa to the rest of the world. We look forward to seeing you again soon.